Well, it's been a couple of days, and I think there's a lot to talk about with regards to Armenia and Azerbaijan and the conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh slash Artsakh. I wasn't calling it by Artsakh in the last video because I couldn't remember off the top of my head what the Armenian name for it was. But I'm going to try and be fair this time, at least in the opening, say both names, or three names, if you include the hyphenated name as two names. So I won't dwell on what I talked about last time and do any review. I'm sure if you've clicked on this, you at least know what's going on there to some extent. You have an interest in this story. And basically, since, at that time, a couple days ago, I was saying that it looked like Turkey was getting involved, which was going to be a bit of a problem. Turkey has been trying to flex their muscles in the region lately. They've been, just like with what happened in Libya, I was speculating that, it looks like they might be trying to do a similar thing in Azerbaijan to try and spread Turkish influence, to try and make sure that, they were on the winning side and that they could have their guys in charge. The Turkey also tried to do this, quite a few years ago when the Syrian civil war first started. They were hoping that Assad would be overthrown and replaced by a pro-Turkish government. And, since I made that video a couple days ago, it's been confirmed pretty widely that Turkey is very much involved in this war, and that they're in fact sending Syrian, Syrian refugees, so-called, into Azerbaijan to fight on their behalf against Armenia, just like they did in Libya. Now, the Armenians, who, from what I understand, were successful in the first war over this territory, which is why you have the de facto Republic of Artsakh, which has been governed by, Armenians since the end of the Cold War, around that time, the mid-90s, when you also had Yugoslavia blowing up and stuff, one of the many crises of the collapse of communism. The Armenians do not seem intimidated by Turkey teaming up with Azerbaijan, and they have not, from everything I've seen that they've been putting out, have no interest in backing down and trying to compromise. It seems pretty clear that their goal is to return, to the antebellum status quo. And their rhetoric is, it's pretty, well, highfalutin's the wrong term. I guess I should say it's pretty urgent. They are essentially making the case that the Turks here are partnering with the Azeris to perpetuate, the second Armenian genocide, and they're saying that they're trying to finish the job that they started back at after World War I, when the first Armenian genocide was perpetrated by Turkey. And of course, being in the United States, we do have a lot of Armenian Americans here who are very much taking up this narrative. Western governments also seem quite sympathetic to the Armenian cause. Turkey really is the only government that I can think of off the top of my head that is backing the Azeris in their quest to retake this lost province from the Armenians. It's kind of the opposite of what happened in the Kosovo War back in the 90s. Of course, Kosovo is kind of a similar situation to Nagorno-Karabakh. Kosovo had been a province of Serbia, and it was a majority ethnically non-Serb, and so the non-Serb, i.e. Albanians there, wanted to split away from Serbia, not be governed by the Serbs, much in the same way that the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh, which was a province of Azerbaijan during the Cold War and during the time of the communist rule there, after the fall of communism, they wanted to break away and not be governed by people who were not of their same ethnic group. And of course, Kosovo was successful in breaking away because largely it had the support of all the Western governments. The only government that didn't support Kosovo and backed Serbia was Russia. And now we have a situation where the Western governments are all backing this. Well, it's hard to call them separatists anymore because they've been separate from Azerbaijan for a couple decades now. Actually, a couple and a half, like 25 years. And the War of Secession started back in '88. So I mean, they've been pretty clear on wanting to be separate from Azerbaijan for well over 30 years at this point. And so I do not expect that to change. In fact, from what I'm seeing today, now nothing concrete has happened yet, but the Turks seem to be softening in their support for the Azeris. They came out and made a joint statement with Lavrov. The Turkish foreign minister and the Russian foreign minister both came out and called for a ceasefire, negotiations, and all these things. And so the Turks publicly now are trying to pivot and have a less overtly pro-Azerbaijan stance on this conflict, even though it does seem that they are still providing material support to Azerbaijan diplomatically. They're not standing in lockstep with Azerbaijan. And so if that's the case, if Turkey doesn't feel like it's politically feasible for them to continue to support Azerbaijan, even though they're still giving them material support at the moment, that might begin to wane. They might decide that this whole conflict is more trouble than it's worth to their government. In which case, Azerbaijan, from what I understand, would not really have the wherewithal to keep up the fight. At that point, the Armenians would probably be able to push them back. If I had to guess, I would say that the only reason why they went forward and engaged in this conflict now at this time is probably because they had some commitments from the Turks that they were going to, provide them with support. If Turkey, however, does maintain their support for Azerbaijan, this likely is going to, get bogged down and turn into a bloody long-term conflict, probably similar to the war in Donbass, in which the Russians were backing the separatists there and keeping that effort alive. Meanwhile, you have the Ukrainian central government unwilling to give in. It seems like we have a pretty similar situation here. The Azeris want to take over the Nagorno-Karabakh, which has been controlled by the Armenians, and the Armenians are not going to give in. They view this as as a holy war to defend their homeland. The ambassador to the U.S., I watched this video he put out, essentially says that 9/10 of historic Armenia has been ethnically cleansed of Armenians, and this is the last bit of land we have left on this earth, and so we're not going to give it up. And a lot of people are viewing this as sort of a battle between Christian Orthodoxy and as they see themselves the oldest Christian nation, versus the Islamic hordes. We're even getting reports of some Greeks who have been volunteering and are now going off to fight in the front against Azerbaijan and on behalf of Armenia. And there might be Russians streaming in eventually too. Russian mercenaries played a pretty big role in Syria. So with that said, I hope all this comes to an end soon. I really don't think that there's really much to be gained here on either side through continued military conflict. I don't think that this region, Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh, is going to go back to just being a normal Azerbaijani province. The reality is that it is ethnically not Azeri at this time. And so even if Azerbaijan is able to push out the organized, Armenian forces there, they're going to face a guerrilla war for a very long time, similar to what Turkey deals with, in the Kurdish regions of Turkey. Just an ongoing insurgency against their government, people who do not recognize them as their rulers, people who don't want to be ruled by that government. I mean, to me, if I were someone who was just a pure Machiavelli, I don't want to try and govern a territory which is, inhabited by a group of people who have zero respect for my authority. It's just not something that's going to work out well. So I think, what would be best is just for things to go back the way they were. Things had been relatively stable for the last couple decades. I'm sure, and I said this in the last video, if you're someone living on the ground in that region, I'm sure you will have noticed, more flare-ups and tensions than I have over this period. But obviously it was nothing like this. So with that said, if you get anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.